Kicks it to Bryant. Bryant dribbling. Has to put it up for the buzzer. Banks it in! He banks in the third!
Have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry. Way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Yes, it has been quite a while. I took I don't want to say a short break. It's been kind of a long break, given the situation with the Eagles making the Super Bowl. I ended up breaking my toe in my right foot. So I've been going through a whirlwind of stuff, trying to get back on track here. Obviously, we came at you Tuesday with the Sixers deep dive after the All-Star break. Today, the duty here, Scotty Talks NBA. We want to talk about the entire NBA post All-Star break. What is it going to look like? What did that All-Star weekend look like? I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I'm just not a huge fan of the All-Star weekend events anymore. And I think they kind of lived up to that once again. It's just not what I look to basketball for, or what I go to sports and competitiveness. It's all about competition for me. I like to see guys going hard at one another, whether it's a team that I like or not, whether it's my favorite team or not, whether it's the Sixers or not. I want to see guys competing at the highest level. That's just not what you get at the All-Star weekend. We'll go over it a little bit. I'll just highlight some of the highlights from the weekend itself. We're going to get into updated power rankings as we do every single Scotty Talks NBA show. Going to talk about post All-Star break power rankings, right? We're going to talk about new faces, new places. Obviously, a lot of stuff went down before the All-Star break, given the trade deadline. We've had the buyout season. Obviously, Russell Westbrook going to the Clippers, amongst many other moves. We're going to take a look at current seeding for each conference, where I had teams at the beginning of the season and where they are now, versus where I have them finishing out in this, what would you call this, the last third of the season, about 25 games left for each team. So we'll take a look at the before All-Star break predictions, basically when the season started. Then we'll take a look at what it looks like right now post All-Star break, and then what I think it will look like post-season. And then finally, we'll get into our normal, usual game picks for Thursday night. Obviously, the NBA is back tonight, so I'll give you all my picks for the games for the slate tonight. And then we'll end it with best bets, as always. But before we get into all of that, of course, I have to do some housekeeping. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms. You can find me at Scotty Drown on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you like to go. As far as DSM Media, what my show is presented to you guys on, founder of DSM Media here, by the way. Be sure to follow DSM Media on all social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter at DSM_media. From there, take the link tree. You can go to Facebook. You can go to YouTube. You can go to Instagram. You can go to TikTok, Twitter, that's where we're most active. So that's where you would want to keep up with us the best. But nonetheless, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. That's where all of our content goes to. We'll have Sixers pregame later tonight for you guys with that matchup with Memphis. That will be exclusively on the YouTube channel. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn the notifications on so you're notified every single time we go live. Finally, before we get into the content of the show today, just wanted to shout out our sponsors over at Gents Barber Lounge. DSM Media is brought to you by Gents Barber Lounge. Check out one of the two great locations in Fishtown and Old City and book your appointments today. Gents owns the craft, and it shows rated the #1 barbershop on Yelp in the Philadelphia area. Multiple award-winning barbers and being able to handle any style of cut, adult or kid. Here's a look at some of Gents' work. All right. Shout out to Gents Barber Lounge. Be sure to book your appointment at gentsbarberlounge.com today. And of course, shout out to our other sponsors over at Luxodon.com, Luxodon Jewelers. Use the code down there on the banner floating at the bottom of the screen. It's code DSM for 25% off and free shipping anytime you go and order off of Luxodon.com. Be sure to use that DSM code for 25% off and free shipping. That being said, let's get into it, guys. First thing I want to start out with, usually we start out with, previous days games. We go over the slate, see what's going on in the NBA. Today, we don't have a previous game slate. We have the All-Star Weekend, then we have updated power rankings. So I'm going to jump right into the All-Star Weekend. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. First day of the All-Star Weekend, you obviously have the Rising Stars Challenge, the celebrity game. I'll be honest, guys, I didn't watch any of it. I saw Jose Alvarado gets the MVP of the Rising Stars Challenge. Interesting. The reason I'd say that's interesting, and I, once again, did not watch the game. I saw the numbers. I checked the box score, of course, saw what happened. But what is interesting about this game to me is that Jose Alvarado wins MVP in a weekend where there is lack of competition, as I discussed earlier in the show. Jose Alvarado is that guy that is never going to lack competition. He's going to go in. He's going to play as hard as he can. He's a guy. He appears to be a guy that is either 0 or 100. He's not going to be anywhere in between that. If he's on the court, he's playing his hardest. You see that showing through. He gets a Rising Stars Challenge MVP. And I think that's also just a big notion for him as a player in this league who is kind of known as like an agitator, like a Patrick Beverley type of player. But Jose Alvarado, I think, can be more than that. I'm not saying he's going to be like a star or get up to all-star or even a starter potential, but he can be a legitimate backup point guard in the NBA, right? Maybe that is what Patrick Beverley is, right? Maybe that is his ceiling, but I think Jose Alvarado shoots the ball at a better clip. He's a little bit more confident, I would say, in his game offensively than, say, a Patrick Beverley. And I just like where he's going. I like his mentality. I like what he's doing, and I like what New Orleans is doing down there. I think it's a perfect fit for him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jose Alvarado. But nonetheless, I'm proud of him for getting that Rising Stars MVP. You move to Saturday night. Obviously, you have the skills challenge, dunk contest, three-point contest. You had Mac McClung. He kind of stole the show of Saturday, winning the dunk contest. And I'll be honest, I watched the highlights from the dunk contest itself. One of the more impressive competitors, or one of the more impressive dunkers in the competition of the last 5 years, you would say, right? Since that Aaron Gordon dunk contest when he was in Orlando, we just haven't had that excitement. Zach LaVine, right, in Minnesota. We just haven't had that excitement with the dunk contest. I feel like Mac McClung, a G League, right, a G League star for the Sixers, I guess you would say, on his two-way contract with the Wilmington Blue Coats. Delaware Blue Coats. I'm tripping. I work in Wilmington for Capital One, so it's got my head twisted up here. But nonetheless, Mac McClung comes out, steals the show, and it was one of the more impressive performances in that contest that I've seen in a while. On another note, Jericho Sims from the New York Knicks. I, once again, did not watch this competition live, but even from the highlight videos, the clips on Twitter, that was really embarrassing, especially the one dunk where he pulls out the 50. Dude, that's not a 50. You're like 6'10". You should be able to jump and do that with your arm. Like, that was just stupid. I mean, it's another example of why the dunk contest and why these skills competitions are just so like played out and dumb. But nonetheless, Mac McClung, shout out to him. Maybe we'll see him up on the Philly roster from time to time. I doubt it, honestly. We have 4 guards that are going to take the floor before him, and even Korkmaz, I would imagine, would see the court at guard before Mac McClung. But nonetheless, great for his story, great for where he's come from. Then you go to the three-point contest. You had Dame Lillard kind of cashing out, winning that. Good for him. At least he won something finally in Portland. And then, of course, you had Team Jazz winning the skills challenge. I think that's one of the dumber competitions as well. Team Jazz, you look at them, they probably did have the most skillful group in that group. You had the Rising Stars, and then you had the Giannis brothers, which I don't know why they would be involved in the skills challenge. That goes over my head each and every year that they're in it. I think they've been in it at least the last 2 years. Finally, you get to Sunday. You have Team Giannis winning that game, 184-175. Jason Tatum wins the MVP, deservedly so. He had 55 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists in this game. Spida Mitchell had 40 points, 10 assists. Jaylen Brown with the broken face had 35 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. Called the All-Star game an overrated layup line. And maybe I might be saying that wrong. I don't want to misquote him. Nonetheless, called the All-Star game a layup line. To be simple there. Kyrie Irving, 32 points, 15 assists, 6 rebounds for Kyrie, and then Joel Embiid with 32.7 rebounds, 4 assists. That would be my pick of 5 players from the game if you wanted to make a team of who played the best in the All-Star game, it was those 5 guys. And I would say by far, you had Giannis go out early in this game with the wrist injury. We'll see what he's looking like in the second half of the season. LeBron went out of this game kind of early with a finger injury himself. He jammed his hand in the rim on a block attempt. So never like to see the injuries, right? Along with an All-Star game that means literally nothing. But nonetheless, I guess you could call that entertaining. 184 to 175. There's no defense. I mean, offensive performances are fun. Points are fun, but they're only fun if they're challenged. And the All-Star game, as Jaylen Brown would say, a layup line. Layup lines are not challenged when you're going to the rim. So take it for what you will. All-Star weekend, they got to do something different. Mac McClung sparked the dunk contest. That was great, but they got to just do something different, make it more meaningful. And even if that has implications on the rest of the season, I've heard suggestions of having it involve getting the 1 seed or getting home court advantage throughout the postseason, or picking your own opponent out of the playoff teams that are within your conference if you ultimately win the All-Star weekend, whatever you want to call it at that point. But nonetheless, not entirely thrilled by the All-Star weekend. Glad it's over because it means we're getting into more serious basketball. Nonetheless, Tatum MVP. Shout out to Jason Tatum. He's a baller, man. You guys know my infatuation with Duke as a Duke fan, of course, and my infatuation with Duke players in the NBA. Jason Tatum is the best one by far right now, coming out of the Brotherhood. So, nonetheless, shout out Jason Tatum. Hate the Celtics, but All-Star MVP, well deserved. We're going to move on to the updated power rankings, guys. These are going to be interesting because what I did, I kind of went a different route with these. And instead of remaining completely fluid, this isn't necessarily based on where these teams are at right now, right? Win-loss record. It's not necessarily based on that. I feel that we're at the midway point. It's not the midway point. We're about 3/4 of the way done. There's only about 25 games left. But I wanted to kind of set the scene for my top 10 teams coming out of the All-Star break and what I expect from them after the All-Star break in those 20 or so games that they have left. So number 1, you can see we have the Boston Celtics. They're not moving. They're sitting at 42-17 right now. They're 7-3 in their last 10. You're talking about the fourth best offense in the league, the 7th best defense in the league. So they're top 5 in offense, top 10 in defense. They play the Pacers tonight. We'll see how that goes coming out of the All-Star break, but I don't see Boston slowing down. Obviously, Jaylen Brown had the facial injury. He played in the All-Star game. He's going to play with it. He's going to be fine. He dropped 35 in that game. I don't see it bothering him that much to where the Boston Celtics fall down. With that being said, the East is relatively close between Boston, Philly, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly in that order. But nonetheless, I don't see Boston slipping up. They're actually getting healthier. They're getting Marcus Smart back, Robert Williams back, Al Horford's back in the lineup. So I see the Celtics kind of keeping pace with what they've been doing, right? You go to number 2. This is probably where things get interesting in reality. I have the Sixers. Maybe it's a little bias of me, but I really like where the Sixers are at right now. And that's why I have them as my number 2 team in the NBA right now. They're third in Eastern Conference. I get it. They're 38-19 behind the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. They are 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 4 in a row going into the All-Star break. They're the 16th best offense. Keep in mind, a lot of time missed by Embiid, Harden, Maxey in the beginning of the year. So that would probably account for why they lack so much on the offensive end. But nonetheless, 16th in the offensive production. And they're 3rd in defensive rating. So that's the most important thing there for the Sixers. They've been playing really good defense, and I think they can get better with the addition of Jalen McDaniels. He brings you a 6'9" wing that is super athletic, can guard wings, guard 4s, right? Can guard guards at times. He's super long, he's quick and athletic. I think that helps him on the defensive end as well. And he's a guy that you can play consistently. Matisse Thybulle was not a guy that you could play consistently. That's why I like Jalen McDaniels a little bit more there. But nonetheless, I like where the Philadelphia 76ers are at. They're healthy going into the second half of the season. You got James Harden, a nice little break over the All-Star weekend, obviously not making the All-Star team, which also fuels him a little bit more, I would say. And then Embiid, he's probably in the best shape that he's been in the past couple of years going into the second half. Or I got to stop saying it. It's hard to say. It's hard to not say second half of the season when you're going after the All-Star break. But after the All-Star break. This is the healthiest I've seen Embiid in recent years, so you love to see that. The main thing over these next 25 games for the Sixers, keep him healthy, keep Harden healthy. If that's load management, I hate it. If that's what you have to do to keep them healthy for the playoffs, get them at full strength, that is what you do. Number 3, we got the Denver Nuggets. They're the first seed in the Western Conference right now at 41-18. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 3 in a row going into the All-Star break. They are the 6th best offensive team on the league. They are the 13th ranked defensive team in the league. So top 15 defense, top 10 offense, solid team, right? You've gotten Michael Porter Jr. He's back in the mix. Jamal Murray's back in the mix. Nikola Jokic still playing at that MVP level. They take on the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. I really like what the Nuggets have done. I don't like them over the Sixers because we got to see them square off recently at full strength. Sixers took that game handily. Mind you, it was in Philly. But we'll have to see if these teams match up again, what that looks like. Nonetheless, that's the only reason I have Philadelphia over the Denver Nuggets. I still really like the Denver Nuggets in the West there. And probably my favorite in the West right now, if I'm being honest. And I know that's saying a lot for a team that, really hasn't proven themselves in the playoffs. Going to number 4, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. And you're probably asking yourself, how are the Bucks below the Sixers in reality? Mind you, they're below the Sixers and the Nuggets, but how are they specifically below the Sixers at 41-17? Sixers are 38-19. The Bucks are 10-0 in their last 10. They've won 12 in a row, so they've won their last 12 going into the All-Star break. They're the 13th ranked offensive team, the 6th ranked defensive team. They actually host the Miami Heat tomorrow. My biggest thing with the Milwaukee Bucks is Giannis. What is his status? He was beat up going into the All-Star game, had the wrist injury that kind of reoccurred, I guess, over the All-Star weekend. Started bothering him, had to get him out of that game. Obviously, it's an All-Star game. You don't want to risk him at all. What does that look like tomorrow when they take on the Heat? Is he going to play? Is he going to play anytime soon with that wrist injury? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be something to keep your eye on. But if Giannis misses any consistent time, I see Milwaukee dropping a little bit. I don't see them dropping past the 3 seed, just dropping enough for the Sixers to get ahead of them. But nonetheless, I like the Sixers at full strength rather than the Milwaukee Bucks with a hampered Giannis. It's as simple as that for me. But the Bucks, they're on a tear. We'll see if they can keep it up out of the All-Star break here. Number 5, we have the Phoenix Suns. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, and this is where what I was talking about at the beginning of this segment takes effect. Because in the past, you wouldn't see the Phoenix Suns up here because they don't have one of the better records. They're not playing some of the best ball right now. We haven't seen KD on that team. I'm putting the Phoenix Suns at number 5 because I think that they are a top 5 team with KD. It's as simple as that. You add Kevin Durant. He's supposed to be healthy coming out of the All-Star break. He might miss the game against OKC tomorrow. But nonetheless, he is healthy. He's going to be back fairly soon, and I expect the Phoenix Suns to take off. I don't think there's going to be any growing pains, anything like that with inserting Kevin Durant into this lineup. You take Mikal Bridges out, you put KD in, you put Kevin Durant in. You're talking about Kevin Durant, one of the best scorers in NBA history, not in the NBA right now, in NBA history. Then you pair him with a guy like Devin Booker, who is an assassin, can shoot from anywhere, but also has become a great playmaker for the Phoenix Suns. You look at Chris Paul, obviously one of the best playmakers in NBA history, one of the smartest players in NBA history. They're going to be able to make this thing fit. I love their coach, Monty Williams. They just got a lot of good stuff going on there. And it's funny because at the beginning of the season, I'll talk a little bit more about this later. I was asking myself, what did the Phoenix Suns do to get better? Because they just got their asses whooped by the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs last season, which is why I had them ranked fairly low coming into the season for their standard, fairly low for their standard, I should say. But now you look at him, what's the difference now? It's Kevin Durant. So I mean, you could if he comes back and has the effect that I expect for the Phoenix Suns, we're going to be moving them into the top 3 most likely. I know I said I like Denver still. I like that chemistry. If the Phoenix Suns, if Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant can stay healthy, Phoenix Suns are going to be at the top of that Western Conference. I just don't know how possible that is within just the last 20 games or so. But nonetheless, Phoenix Suns are a top 5 team in the NBA. Number 16 we have here, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 38-23. They're 8-2 in their last 10. coming off that loss to Philly before the All-Star break. They are the 26th ranked offensive unit in the NBA, but they are the number one team in defensive rating. So they balance things out. They're one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA. They balance it out by being the best defensive team in the NBA. They host the Denver Nuggets tonight. That's going to be a clash that I would like to see. Probably won't. I'll be watching the Sixers and Grizzlies, but nonetheless, a very good game coming out of the All-Star break. That's my only concern, right? I talked about defensive concerns with this team going into the postseason. Obviously, having Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland in the backcourt, two smaller guards in your backcourt, they can get picked on. Usually, that doesn't come into effect until the postseason. But what I will say, when you have Jared Allen, Evan Mobley behind you, kind of helps you out on the defensive end. And look at what they got. They're the number one defensive team in the NBA. So we'll see if they can balance it out with a little bit better of offense. They let Kevin Love go. Want to get Dean Wade involved in there a little bit more, Cedi Osman. So we'll see what the Cleveland Cavaliers do the second half of the season. I was going to say I expect them to slow down. I don't expect them to slow down because I do think that when you look at the class of the Eastern Conference, there's 4 teams that I think are in their own class. But no, I lied. 3 teams in their own class. The Sixers, the Celtics, and the Bucks. Obviously, the top 3, whatever order you want to put those in. Obviously, I would go Boston, Philly, Milwaukee right now with the way Giannis is. But then right after them, there's nobody else in this category for me of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're better than the Knicks. They're better than the Heat. They're better than whoever else you want to look at in the East. They're better than the Brooklyn Nets right now, right? After trading away all your players. But they're not better. They're not in the same realm for me as, say, a Philadelphia. I just, being honest, if we played the Cleveland Cavaliers in a 7-game series, I do think we would beat them in about 5 or 6 games. If I'm being completely honest, unbiased, and I look at it that way against Milwaukee, against Boston as well. I think those 3 top teams are in their own class. Cleveland's down here, but they are in their own class as well. They're not in that same class as the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat or so. Number 7, we have the Memphis Grizzlies at 35-22. They're 4-6 in their last 10 going into the All-Star break. They were really struggling going into the All-Star break. They were really beat up, trying to find their chemistry. Steven Adams going down, it really hurt them. So you want to see Memphis bounce back in the second half of the season. In this last quarter of the season after the All-Star break, I would like to see them step up. They're the 9th-ranked offensive team, 8th-ranked defensive team, so they're top 10 in both sides of the ball. I think it was just more of a slump, if nothing else. I would expect Desmond Bane to get back to normal, Jaren Jackson Jr. get back to normal, Ja Morant especially get back to that MVP caliber play. And Memphis, I think they'll keep themselves afloat in the Western Conference, but nonetheless, they come in at number 7. Coming in at number 8, we have the LA Clippers, 33-28, 6-4 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row. 27th ranked offensive team in the NBA, 4th ranked defensive team. They host the Sacramento Kings tomorrow. You look at the LA Clippers. Honestly, I just like what they did at the trade deadline. I know some people will be beside themselves about Russell Westbrook being on the team. I think that's an upgrade to John Wall. I know people were saying that that's like you waive John Wall or you trade John Wall just to bring in another John Wall. I don't believe that to be true. I think Russell Westbrook is a little bit better, a little bit of an upgrade over John Wall and even a Reggie Jackson. And then you also bring in Mason Plumlee, who's a guy that can eat up the boards. He's not going to play much behind Zubac, but when you need a guy to go in there and eat up boards, he's there. He's a true 5. He's a true center. And you're going to get Kawhi more consistently, I would imagine, over this last part of the season, as well as PG-13. They just got to really build some chemistry. That's what it comes down for the Clippers. It's what we've been saying for the last 3 to 4 years. Guys just got to stay healthy. Guys got to stay healthy, but they also have to stay healthy long enough to build chemistry. So that's what we got to see from the Clippers. Nonetheless, from a talent standpoint, they are right there. They come in at number 8. Number 9 is going to be the Dallas Mavericks. I may end up moving these guys up after I see Luka and Kyrie actually hit the floor together. But nonetheless, 31-29 on the season, 5-5 in their last 10. They lost 3 straight going into the All-Star break. Mind you, Kyrie was just getting acclimated to the team. This team is 21st on the offensive side of the ball. They're ranked 12th on the defensive side of the ball. Actually interesting because you would think Dallas would lack defense, but it's actually the opposite. It's the offense that is actually struggling. Obviously, Luka Doncic went into the All-Star break a little beat up there. Obviously got some rest. He was able to play in that game. So I expect them to come out full strength after the All-Star break, and we start to see some great positives from the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, I mean, they can drop, 50 to 60 points together each night on a given day. And then you add in just the sharpshooters and the scoring around them. It can get a little scary if you're going against the Dallas Mavericks in the second half or last part of this season. Number 10, we have the Miami Heat at 32-27. They're 5-5 in their last 10, lost 2 in a row going into the All-Star break. They are the worst team in the NBA on the offensive side of the ball, but they are the second-ranked defensive unit in the NBA. Just to give you a frame of reference, some honorable mentions for number 10. The Sacramento Kings, I get it. They're third in the Western Conference right now. They're 32-25. They have better record than the Miami Heat, the Dallas Mavericks, the LA Clippers, they don't have a better record than the Memphis Grizzlies. But nonetheless, if we went record-wise, you could probably put them in at number 8 behind the Grizzlies. I'm not going that far. I don't believe that much in the Kings. As I mentioned, they're an honorable mention. If I had to rank them right now, they would be number 11. But nonetheless, I'm not throwing them in over the likes of a Miami Heat team that we watched go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Dallas Mavericks, who went to the Western Conference Finals last year, added Kyrie Irving, Christian Wood. The LA Clippers obviously haven't been healthy. They have Kawhi Leonard and PG-13. They made some moves at the All-Star break. Memphis speaks for itself. You're not going to put the Kings over them. But nonetheless, giving a little bit of respect to the Kings, I'm not trying to disrespect them by not having them in the top 10, despite them being a top 3 seed in the West. Just not sure how long that's going to last. The West is really, really close. I mean, from the 3 seed down to the 12 or 13 seed when you're talking about the Lakers, it's really close. Also had the Nets as an honorable mention at 34-24. I expect a little bit of a drop-off from them, quite honestly. I think that they'll still make the playoffs. They have a playoff-worthy team. But do I like them over, say, the Knicks, over the Miami Heat? Definitely not the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, no, that's where the Nets fall for me right now. We'll see what they look like with the new additions. Spencer Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, right? My man Dorial Finney-Smith from the Mavericks. They picked up a lot of nice pieces, but they all play around the same style or position. And then the New York Knicks are the other honorable mention there at 33-27. So nonetheless, have the Miami Heat there out of respect. I think they turn it on in this last part of the season to get them in the right shape for the playoffs. And then, of course, you're not going to sleep on them once you get to the playoffs. But nonetheless, Miami Heat round out the top 10 of the updated power rankings coming out of the All-Star break. So once again, we have Boston at number 1, Philadelphia at number 2, Denver Nuggets at number 3, the Milwaukee Bucks at number 4, the KD-led Phoenix Suns at number 5, the Cleveland Cavaliers at number 6, Memphis Grizzlies at number 7, Clippers at 8, Mavs at 9 with Kyrie, and then the Miami Heat at number 10 to round us off there. That is going to be the updated top 10 power rankings for you guys. Next, I want to focus just a little bit. This is going to be a brief segment. New faces, new places, what to look for in this last part of the NBA season. Not just the trades at the trade deadline, not just the buyout market, but also what is going on around the league. The first thing you look at, obviously, Kevin Durant traded to Phoenix. We've already talked about that a little bit just within the power rankings, but I think he changes Phoenix's fortunes. I think he puts them in legitimate contention for the NBA championship. Obviously, it's going to be the pressing matter is going to be getting these guys to play the right way together by the time you get to the important parts of the season. Obviously, the postseason. Do they have enough time within these 20 plus games to get enough chemistry together to beat a team like Memphis Grizzlies that have been together for a few years now, beat a team like the Denver Nuggets who have their stars back now in Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. So that's where it gets interesting, but nonetheless, KD pushes them into that upper echelon of the NBA, in my opinion. Then you look at Kyrie to Dallas. I think they have a similar effect. Obviously, Kyrie's just not the player that KD is, but he still adds a ton to that Dallas Mavericks team. I'd also go as far as to say that Dallas Mavericks team They did beat the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs last year. I don't think the construction this season, the way they were playing, it just was not as good as what the Phoenix Suns were. Now, obviously, the Phoenix Suns have been beat up this season. Not a lot of Chris Paul, not a lot of Devin Booker so far. But nonetheless, I don't think that the Dallas Mavericks were constructed as good as the Phoenix Suns before. So then you add Kyrie, but you add KD to the other team. That's why I think Phoenix Suns look a little bit better than the Dallas Mavericks. But I would put the Dallas Mavericks right there on the outside of that top contention, the top contending teams in the NBA. But next we have the Westbrook to LA, to the LA Clippers. Obviously got traded to Utah, got waived there, and then decided to go and sign with the other LA team, the LA Clippers. Like I said, I think that's a great addition. He was talked about in the Sixth Man of the Year conversations, which is funny because you'll have Sixth Man of the Year conversations about Russell Westbrook, but then you also have conversations where people will tell you that he doesn't belong in the NBA anymore with the style of play, the way he plays, and losing basketball, according to some people. I don't believe that. I think it was just a matter of fit, and he just didn't fit in LA. He hasn't fit really anywhere in any of these teams that he's went to in the last couple of years. But when you put him in LA with the Clippers, you put Kawhi on one side of him, you put Paul George in the other, you put Zubac in the middle to get rebounds, and then you can add in whatever forward you want there for floor spacing because Russell Westbrook's such a good rebounding guard, right? He's such a good facilitator. That's all he has to do for the Clippers. Get guys open, drive hard down the lane. That's all they wanted John Wall for. They wanted more athleticism at the point guard spot. You get that in Westbrook, and you get it times 2 or 3, I would say. I went on the record saying I believe John Wall was washed. I didn't think he was going to give much to the Clippers. I thought he would help. I didn't think he would give much. He's now out on the buyout or out waived on the free agent market and still doesn't have a team. Westbrook winds up in LA to be his replacement. I think it's a great replacement, a great move by the LA Clippers. They also added Mason Plumlee. I thought that was a great move. You bring in Russell Westbrook, you don't need Reggie Jackson anymore either. So good move all around for the Clippers. You move to the Sixers. Sixers add Dwayne Dedman. I don't need to get into that. But Jalen McDaniels, that's the move that I like. You trade Matisse Thybulle, who, don't get me wrong, I think Matisse Thybulle has a ton of upside for the Portland Trailblazers. Maybe they can find that within them. They have time. We don't have time to wait around for Matisse Thybulle to become a consistent NBA player that can play and actually have a role on a team consistently. We don't have time for that. Jalen McDaniels, to my eyes so far, has been exactly that. He gives you he gives you more than what you expected out of Matisse Thybulle even, but you get it on a consistent basis, and I think that's the most important thing. Gives you around 10 points, 5 rebounds a game. Sixers don't even need that. They just need it sometimes. He can give that to you consistently, along with being a 6'9" wing that can guard forwards and guards. I mean, he's an athletic freak. Sixers lacked athleticism. I thought that was a great get at the trade deadline. One of the more slept-on moves, I would say, even for Sixers fans. You move to the Nuggets. Obviously, I mentioned Jokic and how they've been playing. They're the number 1 seed in the West. They add Reggie Jackson, a guy. Yes, Russell Westbrook's an upgrade for the LA Clippers, but Reggie Jackson's still a pretty good quality player. I would take him over John Wall. You add Reggie Jackson. You also add Thomas Bryant, a guy that can space the floor, a guy that can actually back up Nikola Jokic and play in a similar manner, at least outside the paint, right? He spaces the floor, can help with rebounding a bit. Definitely better than DeAndre Jordan, if we're being honest. So a nice little upgrade for the Denver Nuggets. Lakers. I thought the Los Angeles Lakers made out like bandits over the All-Star break, quite honestly. They bring in Jared Vanderbilt from Utah. Great. I obviously wanted him on the Sixers. I thought he would be a great fit there. He's a guy that rebounds, plays defense. He's long, lengthy, athletic. He can play anywhere. He can fit anywhere. He's just that type of player. Then you look at Malik Beasley. He's a guy that can hit 3 to 4 threes a game off the bench. You add instant scoring from a guy like him to your bench if you're the Lakers. I love that move. And then, of course, D'Angelo Russell. He can be your starting point guard consistently now. He's going to give you consistent offensive production. Yes, he's lackadaisical in the defensive end, but he makes up for that, especially when you're talking about moving on from Russell Westbrook or even a Patrick Beverley. I think he is better than those guys. And you get the reunion in LA, see if it can work out the second time. So I love what the Lakers did there. They kind of revamped this roster, which is ultimately why I do think they're going to make somewhat of a push for the playoffs. I don't know how serious it will be. I don't know if they'll actually make the playoffs, but they're going to make a significant push in this last part of the season. We talked about the Nets, who they've lost. So KD goes to Phoenix. Kyrie goes to Dallas. TJ Warren goes along with KD to Phoenix. Excuse me. But on the other side, Nets add Spencer Dinwiddie from Dallas. They add Dorial Finney-Smith from Dallas. Dinwiddie, obviously a point guard, combo guard, can score the ball, can facilitate. Played in Brooklyn previously, so he has familiarity there. You talk about Dorial Finney-Smith. He's a lengthy, another one of those 3-and-D wing type of players that you love to have in today's modern NBA. But then they also add Mikal Bridges. They add Cam Johnson from the Phoenix Suns in that KD trade. Apparently, we're offered 4 firsts for Mikal Bridges, which just speaks to his caliber. But do I think he's worth that? I would have probably taken the 4 firsts for him. But he's a good player nonetheless, and we're going to see if he can take his game to the next level. Being what I would say the number one guy on that Brooklyn Nets team, we'll see. It'll iron itself out between him and Dinwiddie, maybe some Cam Thomas mixed in there. But nonetheless, you add Dinwiddie, you add Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, a consistent shooter, consistent scorer, along with Dorial Finney-Smith, amongst other pieces. They got a pretty decent haul back, considering you're giving up Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The Milwaukee Bucks, they added Jay Crowder. My only concern, once again, that Giannis injury. How injured is he? Is he actually going to play with the injury? Can you play through the injury? Is it worth playing through the injury? How long does it take to heal? These are all things that the Bucks have not clued us into yet. We have to wait and see if he even plays tomorrow night against the Miami Heat. Speaking of the Miami Heat, they add Kevin Love. Thought that was a great addition for them. Not exactly sure why Cleveland let him go. Obviously, he fell out of the rotation, but why is that? Obviously, he's lackadaisical in defense. He's a defensive liability, but he can shoot the hell out of the ball. Think that's a good add for a Miami Heat team that has struggled to score. They're the 30th ranked offense in the NBA. They're last. Aside from additions, those are the only ones that I'm going to focus on for now. Obviously, there was a ton of moves over the break there. Matisse Thybulle in Portland, I talked about that a little bit. I do like that fit for Matisse to get his opportunities. But aside from, players moving into other spaces, we also have a ton of injuries coming out of the All-Star. Well, not a ton. I shouldn't say a ton. Major injuries. You have Steph, you have Zion, who continue to get injured this season for some reason. And they're not due back until early March. Consider that whatever you would like. It could be next week, could be in 3 weeks. But they're due back in early March to help the Warriors and the Pelicans get back on track. Lonzo Ball is officially out for season. He's not going to see any time for the Chicago Bulls this season, which is kind of disappointing, I will say. That it's kind of disappointing just for Lonzo. He was having he started out very fast there in Chicago and really hasn't played since. You had the Atlanta Hawks firing their head coach, Nate McMillan. Kind of crazy to see their fall over the last 2 years. You go from knocking the number 1 seed in the Philadelphia 76ers out of the playoffs in the second round, going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You had that huge turnaround that season with Nate McMillan being named the head coach. And then just 2 years later, after 2 disappointing seasons, he's out the door. And they were talking at the time like he was one of the best coaches in the NBA. 2 years later, he's out the door. Not even 2 years later, for being realistic here. And then finally, you talk about the Boston Celtics head coach, Joe Mazzulla. I don't know what they were waiting for. Also, Brooklyn Nets head coach, Jacques Vaughn, both receive extensions. Joe Mazzulla was just named the permanent head coach. Jacques Vaughn received an extension. Both of those guys, well-deserved, in my opinion. They both had their part in significant turnarounds for each team. Shouldn't say a turnaround for Boston, just kind of keeping it the same pace that they were at last year. But nonetheless, gotta love that for those coaches, even though they are rivals for the Sixers. Let's take a look at where everybody's at right now. So we're going to talk about postseason seeding and what I had at the beginning of the season versus what we see now. So we're going to start in the Eastern Conference as we always do. I'm an East Coast guy. I like the Eastern Conference more. We had so coming into the season, I had my pre-ranked teams of how I thought the seeding would go. So I'll give those to you first. So coming into the season at the 10 seed, this is where the play-in starts. We had the Charlotte Hornets. That was a miserable fail. Currently, the Toronto Raptors reside in the 10 spot in the Eastern Conference at 28-31. At number 9, I had the Chicago Bulls also in the play-in tournament, kind of continuing where they were from last year. I mean, they weren't significant last year, but they at least made the playoffs. They actually have fallen from grace even further. It's actually the Washington Wizards that are in 9th place right now in the Eastern Conference at 28-30. Number 8 was actually the only seeding that I have right so far, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. I had the Atlanta Hawks at the 8th seed with that addition of DeJounte Murray. Obviously isn't working the way they wanted, given that they fired their head coach. They're 29-30 right now, but they actually are in the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference nonetheless. Number 7, I had the Toronto Raptors. As you know already, they are actually in 10th place in the Eastern Conference right now. The Miami Heat are actually the 7th seed right now at 32-27. You go to number 6. I had the Cleveland Cavaliers there originally at the beginning of the season. You look at it right now, we have the New York Knicks there at 33-27. Going to number 5, we had the Miami Heat originally at the beginning of the season. I thought they would continue their success after the Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Nonetheless, it's the Brooklyn Nets there at 34-24. Do expect Brooklyn to drop a little bit there, though. Coming in at number 4, I had the Brooklyn Nets as the number 4 team in the East coming into the season. That's with KD and Kyrie. Ultimately, it is the Cleveland Cavaliers that reside there right now at 38-23. Number 3, I actually had the Boston Celtics as the number 3 seed coming into the season. That's my mistake. Don't kill me for it. I thought they would fall off a little bit by losing their head coach. But nonetheless, Joe Mazzulla is filled in and has not missed a beat. If not, he's made them better. Nonetheless, in the 3 spot in the East right now is the Philadelphia 76ers at 38-19, who I actually had as my preseason 2 seed in the Philadelphia 76ers with that addition of PJ Tucker. D'Anthony Melton as well. I pegged the Sixers to be the number 2 seed in the East by now. Well, I shouldn't say by now, by the postseason. But as of right now, I am wrong. Milwaukee is at the 2 seed at 41-17. And then finally, I did have Milwaukee slated as the number 1 seed in preseason. I also had them slated as my NBA champion, which I'm still going to roll with. But nonetheless, Boston holds the 1 seed at 42-17. Just a win, half game over the Milwaukee Bucks right now. Moving to the Western Conference. We'll start at number 10. Number 10, preseason. I had the Houston Rockets. So in my mind, I had a young team that was going to outperform their expectations. I was wrong in the fact that it wasn't the right young team. The Oklahoma City Thunder are currently the 10 seed in the West right now at 28-29. Obviously, SGA has been playing out of his mind. I love me some Josh Giddey as well. Jalen Williams, the one with the twisty. It's hard for me to explain because I know they got 2 Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams with the twisty, the darker skinned Jalen Williams, I should say. You have light skinned Jalen Williams, and then you have black Jalen Williams. I'm going with black Jalen Williams. He's a dog. I love his game. Even light skinned Jalen Williams out of Arkansas, I do like his game. I just don't like it as much as the other Jalen Williams. But nonetheless, this OKC team is exciting. They're going to get Chet Holmgren back next season, and maybe they have another young budding star added to the mix with them as well. Number 9 preseason, I had the LA Lakers with the 9 seed in the West. It's actually the Golden State Warriors that have fallen from grace. They're at 29-29 as the 9th seed in the West. Obviously, Steph missed some time. Clay missed some time. Oh, a bunch of different guys missed some time. Andrew Wiggins. Coming in at number 8, I had Minnesota slated as the preseason 8 seed. Got 8 seed right again. Because Minnesota is currently slated in the 8th seed at 31-30. Number 7, I actually got that one right as well. I had the New Orleans Pelicans, although if you would have asked me about 2 months into the season if I thought that they would be the 7th seed right now, I would tell you not a chance. It would probably be in the top 3 in the West for me. But nonetheless, you have the Zion injury. You have Brandon Ingram, who has now returned from injury. But nonetheless, both of them missing time throughout this season, which leaves the New Orleans Pelicans at 30-29 and in the 7th spot in the West. Coming in at number 6 preseason, I had the LA Clippers. Obviously, they haven't been able to ultimately fulfill that, but they've actually done better than I slated them in the preseason. That is in mind, Kawhi Leonard having to return from injury. When does he get mixed back in? When does he finally feel comfortable? Nonetheless, Dallas Mavericks hold that position right now in the 6th seed at 31-29. Number 5 seed I actually got right, the Phoenix Suns. So I had them slated at number 5, obviously just outside of the top 4, which you'll find out here shortly. But they're currently 32-28, and they're holding that 5 seed down. And then we have the Denver Nuggets. I had them preseason slated at number 4. It's actually the Clippers that hold this position at 33-28. So they're outperforming my expectations for them. Number 3, the Dallas Mavericks I had preseason. They're obviously at number 6, so they've fallen below expectations. The team that is actually in that 3 seed, Sacramento Kings, who are blowing expectations out of the water. I didn't even have them in my top 10. Shame on me. Nonetheless, Sacramento Kings at 32-25 hold down the 3 seed. Number 2, I had preseason slated the Warriors to take that spot. It's actually the Memphis Grizzlies, who are 35-22 right now. Warriors obviously down in that 9 spot currently in the play-in tournament. Steph should return early March, so we'll see what that looks like. Memphis Grizzlies, I think they're right where they belong. I mean, I had them slated for number 1 seed preseason. They're number 2. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets have played really well, but I expect the Grizzlies to stay in the race this entire season, so we'll see how they finish out. Coming in at number 1, as I mentioned, I had the Memphis Grizzlies slated preseason as the number 1 seed. Now it is the Denver Nuggets at 41-18. So you got to love what has gone on this season. A few surprises, I would say, from my expectations, but then also a few things that have kind of gone the way I thought they would, in a sense. Finally, with this segment, I just want to give you my new predictions for the Eastern Conference playoff positions as well as the Western Conference playoff positions. We're going to give you an updated prediction list. I'm still going to roll with reflecting. We're going to reflect once we get to postseason. We'll reflect back on these, but then we'll also reflect back to the preseason rankings as well. But just to give it to you straight here, Eastern Conference teams I'm rolling with, my top 10 seeds, my prediction for this postseason as of after the All-Star break. I have the Indiana Pacers at number 10 at 26-34. I think they're going to be able to climb their way back up. Tyrese Halliburton missed some time early on not early on, around January. Tyrese Halliburton missed some time, and they got him back. He's their guy. He's their star player, if you want to be honest about it. And I do see them fighting their way back up into that 10 spot. 26-34 right now. They're 2.5 games back of the Toronto Raptors for that 10 seed. Mind you, I have Toronto moving up to the 8 seed right now. Toronto's in the 10 spot right now. I have them moving to the 8. At number 9, I actually have the Washington Wizards holding their place because they've been able to do this without Bradley Beal. So at some point, I imagine you have to add Bradley Beal back into the equation. Some people will argue that they've been worse with Bradley Beal. I'm not going to argue with you there. I don't pay super close attention to the Wizards, but I do think they have enough there that they can stay in the race, stay in the play-in tournament there at the 9 seed. I don't think the Pacers will be able to jump them. I think they'll probably hover around the same mark in these last 20 or so games. Number 8, as I mentioned, I have the Toronto Raptors moving up from the 10 to the 8. Ultimately, we have the Atlanta Hawks. I have them falling out of the top 10 now. I know I originally had them at 8. I don't have them making the play-in tournament. You fire your head coach. We will see, right? We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. It hasn't been working anyways. Does that make them worse? We'll see. I have Toronto Raptors at 8. Final team in the play-in, we have the Miami Heat at 32-27 right now. I just don't know if they're going to be able to jump the Brooklyn Nets. They're what? They're 2.5 games back of the Brooklyn Nets. They definitely could jump the Nets. I just don't think the Nets are going to be that bad that they're going to drop below, say, the Miami Heat. Miami Heat very well could surpass them. Maybe they surpass the New York Knicks. Right now, I think the Brooklyn Nets are ahead enough with 20-plus games left that I don't know if the Miami Heat will be able to win every single game to make up that ground, in a sense. Not to say that the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets are going to win every game. I just don't think they're going to lose enough games for Miami to jump them the way Miami's been playing this season. Coming in at number 6, as I mentioned, Brooklyn Nets, they're at 34-24 right now. They ultimately, I do believe they will drop from the 5, so they'll drop below the New York Knicks. But I don't see them dropping further than that. Like I said, they have a ton of 3 and D guys, and that's really important in today's NBA, which I think bodes well for them going forward nonetheless. Going to number 5, I have the New York Knicks at 33 and 27 currently. I just look at star power at that point, right? You have Julius Randle, who's playing at a really high level. You have Jalen Brunson, who's playing at a really high level. I like what the Knicks have been able to do this season. They've been consistent, and I ultimately think they can keep their spot. They can stay afloat and keep themselves in that top 5 of the East. But nonetheless, have the Knicks there at number 5 seed. Number 4 through 1, these are going to be the same teams they are right now. Just in a little bit different of an order. So number 4, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, 38 and 23. Don't think they're going to fall off. I think they're just going to stay right where they are because these other 3 teams ahead of them are better. They're going to perform better down the last stretch of the season. Number 3, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. This is interesting because the Sixers are currently 2.5 games back of the Bucks, but you have the Giannis injury and you have the Sixers that are fully healthy. That's going to be a big telling. How injured is Giannis? That'll be a big telling whether or not Philly gets his 2nd seed or not. Ultimately, I'll put it this way. When they're healthy, when the Bucks are healthy, I do think they're better than the Sixers, just to be clear here. Number 2, Philly, obviously not better than Boston, but I think they'll end up better than Milwaukee just because of that Giannis injury, barring Harden and Embiid stay healthy, of course. And then Boston at number 1. I don't think anybody's going to catch them. Milwaukee's the closest. They have the injury to Giannis. Will they really be able to catch the Boston Celtics? And then Philly, I think they're just going to have too much ground to make up with how good Boston is, especially with Philly's remaining schedule. We move to the West. Coming in at number 10, I have the Portland Trailblazers at 28 and 30. I think they're going to be able to move themselves ahead of the Oklahoma City Thunder ultimately at that 28 and 29 mark. They're 1 loss back. So I do ultimately think the Blazers, they have the veteran leadership needed, Dame Lillard, right, to get them to that next level. But maybe, just maybe, the Oklahoma City Thunder can surprise us and make the play-in tournament. I think that would be awesome for them. Nonetheless, I got the Blazers making that move. Number 9, I have the Lakers moving up to the 9 seed, which currently they're the 13 seed in the 11, 12, 13. They're the 13 seed in the West right now, but they're only 2 games back of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're 2.5 games back of the Golden State Warriors. Ultimately, I have the Lakers moving into that 9 spot. I thought they improved significantly over the deadline, which is ultimately why I'm putting them at this mark. Number 8, we have the Warriors. It's hard for me to imagine them getting out of the play-in tournament without having Steph back right now. He's supposed to be back early March. I don't know if that means early March or mid-March. If he comes back mid-March, is that enough time for them to make up that much ground to get out of the play-in tournament? I don't know with how tight this West Coast is. I would be happy to just see them stay in the playoff picture, quite honestly. We need to get Steph healthy soon there in Golden State. Number 7, I have the New Orleans Pelicans at 30 and 29. Early on in the season, they played great. If they can get Zion back healthy, they're going to be a juggernaut in the West. If they can't, I do think they can stay afloat, stay in the play-in tournament considerations with Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum-led group. Coming in at number 6, I do have the Sacramento Kings at 32 and 25. I think ultimately they're going to drop a little bit from that 3 seed because the West is so tightly contested. But I do have them making the playoffs comfortably because they've set themselves up nicely going into this last part of the season. Number 5, I have the Dallas Mavericks at 31 and 29. Obviously, the addition of Kyrie, I love what they're doing there, but I can't put them up over these 4 teams I have ahead of them. We'll see. The Mavs at number 5 are highly competitive with the number 4 LA Clippers, and a lot of stipulations come into both, right? Can Kawhi stay healthy? Can PG stay healthy? How does Russell Westbrook affect that team? But what I would say is I think the Clippers have a overall better unit than the Dallas Mavericks as of right now. We'll see how it plays out with Kyrie addition, along with Luka being healthy there. Number 3, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. I have them finishing 3rd. I do think Phoenix is ultimately going to jump them. You have Phoenix, who is what? 4.5 games back of the Memphis Grizzlies right now. You know, I'm going to change. I'm going to put Memphis at number 2 and Phoenix at number 3 because that's a pretty long jump for Phoenix staff to get to. And you would need Memphis to lose a bunch of games in these last 20 or so. I don't see that happening. So I'm actually going to go with Phoenix at number 3. The addition of KD, I do think they'll move from that 5 spot, move ahead of the Clippers, the Mavericks, the Kings. But nonetheless, I have Memphis at number 2. A lot of ground to make up there for Phoenix to jump ahead of them, although I do think they're going to be a better team than Memphis come the postseason. Number 1, Denver. They're 41-18 right now. They have a 5-game lead on the Memphis Grizzlies as the 2 seed there. And I think that's a lot of ground for the Grizzlies to make up, or any team to make up. I don't think anybody's going to be able to do it. I think Denver holds on to that 1 seed throughout the rest of the season. So once again, Eastern Conference, I have 10 through 1, Pacers at 10, Wizards at 9, Toronto at 8, Miami at 7, Brooklyn at 6, New York Knicks at 5, Cleveland Cavaliers at 4, Milwaukee Bucks at 3, Philadelphia 76ers at 2, and the Boston Celtics at 1. Then on the West Coast, I have the Blazers at 10, Lakers at 9, Warriors at 8, Pelicans at 7, Kings at 6, Mavs at 5, Clippers at 4, Phoenix at 3, Memphis at 2, Denver at 1. Those will round out my 20 playoff teams that I'm predicting to make the field. From there, we'll see. I'll get you some more up-to-date playoff predictions once we actually know who's going to make it. But those are going to be my 20 playoff teams as of right now after the All-Star break going into tonight's action. Which gets us finally to tonight's action, guys. It's going to be the last segment of the show here. I'll try to move through this quick because I know this has been a long one. We're pushing an hour now. But nonetheless, we got a pretty good slate tonight. I believe there's 9 games to pick through. So you have the Denver Nuggets visiting the Cleveland Cavaliers, Cleveland being a 2.5-point favorite. You have the Celtics visiting Indiana to take on the Pacers. Celtics are an 8-point favorite in that one. You have the Pistons visiting the Magic. Orlando is a 7-point favorite in that one. You have a juggernaut showdown between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Philadelphia 76ers right here in Philly on TNT tonight. Love to see that. Philly is a 3.5-point favorite in that one. We have the Pelicans and Raptors squaring off in Toronto. Toronto is a 6-point favorite. Spurs heading to Dallas to take on the Mavericks. Mavericks are a 14-point favorite. Maybe we get to see that debut of Kyrie and Luka. Then we have the Thunder taking on the Jazz in Utah. Utah is a 1-point favorite there. We have the Warriors traveling to LA to take on the Lakers. Lakers a 6-point favorite there. And then finally ending the night with the Blazers at Kings. And Sacramento is a 6.5-point favorite there. Going to give you my winners across the board here. Starting up top, we're going to go with the Nuggets on the road. They're going to take care of business against the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. They got some rest, right? Nuggets coming off the rest. Cleveland Cavaliers coming off the rest. Who's the better team in the NBA right now? It's the Denver Nuggets. I'm going with the Nuggets in this one, even on the road. Pacers and Celtics. I know the Celtics, they've struggled with the Pacers this year. They struggled with the Pistons. They struggled with the Magic. But I got them taking care of business after the All-Star break. I think all of these teams need to come out, and they know what they're playing for, right? They're playing for seeding in that Eastern Conference that is highly competitive. But nonetheless, I got the Celtics taking that one. Pistons Magic. I'm going to go with the Magic in that one. They're at home. I think they're the better unit overall. I think the Pistons are arguably the worst team in the NBA. And I don't think the Magic are actually that close to being the worst team in the NBA in reality. I actually like the Magic to cover in that one as well at home. Sixers and Grizzlies. Obviously, I'll go over that in the Sixers pregame shortly here, but I'm going to go with the Sixers in this one. I take them to cover at home. I think they're going to come out of this last part of the season. They're going to come out with a lot to prove, right? The schedule's really tough. They're going to have to win these games at home. I think they take care of business tonight on national television. Then we have the Pelicans visiting the Raptors. I'm going to go with the Pelicans here to go ahead and cover the spread, obviously, but to also go ahead and win this game on the road. They do have Brandon Ingram back, which I think is not being accounted for with this spread. Obviously, he was dealing with that big toe injury all season. I think he's ready to bounce back. And when he's in the lineup, the Pelicans are very formidable. We saw that in the postseason last year. So I think they can take down the Raptors tonight. Next, we have the Spurs at the Mavericks. I'm going with the Mavericks in this one, simply put. Thunder at Jazz. I'm going to go with OKC in this one. I love what they're doing. I would love to see them make the playoffs and make that play-in tournament at least. Warriors at Lakers. I'm going to go with the Lakers in this one. No Steph. Maybe no Andrew Wiggins in this one. Favors the Lakers. They're going to come out with a strong punch, I would imagine, after the All-Star break to make their way right into the playoff picture. They built the pieces. They put the pieces around LeBron and AD to make the playoffs. Now you just got to go out there and do it. And then finally, ending the night, we have the Trailblazers at the Kings. I mentioned I think the Blazers are going to gain some ground in the last part of the season here. I ultimately have them covering against the Sacramento Kings. I think this one's going to be close. I am still going to take the Kings at home, though. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Blazers win this game nonetheless. So once again, we're going Nuggets, Celtics, Magic, Sixers, Pelicans, Mavericks, Thunder, Lakers, and Kings as our winners of the night. And then finally, best bets of the evening. I got 5 of them here for you. 5 plays that I love this evening. Nikola Jokic over 9.5 assists at -102 on FanDuel. He averages 10.1 assists per game. He's hit that mark in 5 of his last 7 games going into the All-Star break. So I love Jokic coming out of the break refreshed, going out there, getting his teammates involved. This is a defensive front court that you're looking at in Cleveland with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Going to make it a little difficult on Jokic. I'm not saying they're going to shut him down or anything like that, but I think there's going to be opportunity for him to get his other teammates involved here. Tyrese Halliburton, over 8.5 assists versus the Boston Celtics tonight at -110. He's averaged 10.1 assists per game on the season. I do once again think this is a game where he gets his teammates involved, tries to keep everybody involved, get shooters open, try to stay in this game ultimately. He is the star. The ball is going to be in his hands. I expect him to make some plays tonight. But once again, averages 10.1 assists per game on the season. Jason Tatum, over 29.5 points at -110. Obviously, he's coming off that huge performance in the All-Star game. I think he just keeps it going. He's rolling. He's arguably the MVP of this season. Has the best record in the NBA as far as his team. He can score 30 points falling asleep, man. He's averaging 30-plus points on the season. This is a no-brainer for me. I'm taking Tatum over 29.5 at -110. We have Scotty Barnes, over 6.5 rebounds at -115. He actually has averaged 7.5 rebounds in the month of February. In the month of February, he has hit that mark in 4 of 7 games. So I like those odds there. And then finally, rounding out our best bets, we have Josh Giddey, Old Faithful here, over 6.5 assists at +118. These definitely have the best juice of the night going against the Utah Jazz. He averages 7 assists per game in the month of February, and once again has hit that mark 4 of 7 times in the month of February. Love, love, love Josh Giddey. Love his plays. I would go with his rebounds. I would go with his threes over he's over 0.5 threes tonight. I would go with that. Lay it down. I love Josh Giddey tonight and always. Josh Giddey is one of my favorite players, I'm starting to think. But nonetheless, that rounds out the best bets for the Thursday night slate. Happy to have the NBA back. And when I say to have the NBA back, get that All-Star shit over with. We're back to the real slate with the real competition. Can't wait to see it tip off tonight. But guys, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like the video if you like the content, if you enjoyed the discussion. Be sure to leave your comments. Tell me how you're feeling about my thoughts. And of course, next week I will be back to you on our regular scheduled time, Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We will be live. So I'll be able to interact with you guys directly. But nonetheless, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to DSM Media. Turn the notifications on, like the video, share it with your friends, get our name out there, help us grow. Ultimately, it's a lot more fun for everybody when we have you all chiming in the comments here and creating that open discussion. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in as always, and be sure to have a great night. I'll see you guys later on Sixers pregame. Peace.